Hello, it's Saturday the 14th of February. You're tuned in to our late night newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. It's a pleasure to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. And we start on rather a light note. One of Korea's most important holiday periods, Lunar New Year, or Seollal, as it's known here, is just a few days away now, with China marking the festive period with a national holiday of its own. Well over 100,000 Chinese tourists have booked vacations here in Korea. Numbers are up almost a third compared to last year, and data shows the vast majority of the Chinese tourists making the short flight are relatively young and have a certain shopping list in mind. Connie Lee starts us off.
Some 126,000 tourists from China are set to visit the land of the morning calm during the Lunar New Year holiday, which starts on Wednesday. Well, according to new data, well over two-thirds of them are the young Chinese folks, people in their 20s and 30s. The statistics released by KDB Daewoo Securities on Saturday comes after an analysis of data from China's biggest travel site, Ctrip. The research shows 60% of Chinese visitors to Korea during the holidays were born in the 1980s, with around a fifth of the total born in the 1990s. That means the overwhelming majority of the visiting Chinese tourists will be 35 or younger. But not only are the tourists young, most of them are also women. Data shows 70% of Chinese tourists coming to Korea next week are female. And with shopping being a major tourist attraction here in Korea, a new buying trend is emerging among the younger Chinese tourists. Traditionally, the clothes, the makeup, and duty-free items top the shopping list. However, these days, the younger Chinese are looking for baby products and kitchen appliances. Baby skincare products, rice cookers, and electric juicers are among the most sought-after items. Experts say the Chinese place more trust on Korean-made baby products and that there's a greater awareness of local kitchenware brands thanks to the popularity of Korean TV dramas in China. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, with relations between the countries at a low not seen in many years, Japan is reportedly mulling over whether to end its $10 billion currency swap agreement with Korea. A source within the Japanese government told Reuters on Saturday that Tokyo isn't planning on extending the pact unless Korea sends a request. The Japanese daily Asahi Shimbun also says it looks unlikely the deal will be extended, and an announcement on the matter will be made in the coming days. The deal, launched in 2001, is set to expire on February 23rd. Korea has built up massive foreign exchange reserves in the years since, so analysts say Seoul has little practical need to borrow foreign currency these days anyway. Relations between Korea and Japan have soured over Tokyo's continual territorial claims to Korea's Dokdo Island and a number of sensitive historical issues. The United States has reiterated that it's not in talks with South Korea about the possible deployment of the THAAD missile defense system to the Korean Peninsula. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby says Washington is in close consultation with its allies in the region about a wide range of military missions and capabilities. But the US has not held any formal discussions with Seoul on THAAD, which stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. This issue is controversial, with critics saying it's part of a broader US attempt to get South Korea to join its missile defense system. Russia and China say such a move would present a threat to their national security. Seoul is currently developing its own low-altitude missile defense system called the Korea Air and Missile Defense. That's scheduled to be implemented by the year 2020. Now, more evidence has surfaced that North Korea conducted a secret underground nuclear test in 2010, a test that went completely unnoticed by the outside world. Citing seismic analysis published last month, Michael Schopner of Princeton University and Ulrich Kuhn of the University of Hamburg say that In May 2010, multiple monitoring stations in East Asia started picking up traces of unusual radioactive isotopes. The researchers say the detection of such isotopes and the latest seismic analysis from that period points to it being a nuclear test in North Korea. Now, this is the third independent study that alleges Pyongyang conducted a test in May 2010, but none, we must stress, have been officially confirmed. The South Korean government and the international community believe North Korea has conducted 3 nuclear tests, one in October 2006, another in May 2009, and the most recent in February 2013. Scientists researching the origin of the universe have been forced to go back to the drawing board after their groundbreaking discovery of possible evidence supporting the Big Bang theory turned out to be nothing more than a speck of space dust. Paul Lee reports.
Last year, a U.S. team of astronomers from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics dominated headlines across the globe when they announced their groundbreaking discovery. They had observed evidence of gravitational waves from the very early universe. The researchers analyzed polarized light from a telescope at the South Pole and said they detected for the first time the characteristic patterns of cosmic inflation, which supports the theory of the Big Bang nearly 14 billion years ago. The research was praised as one of the most important scientific discoveries of this century, apparently proving the formation and expansion of the universe.
For us to understand the initial condition of the universe, it's the same as understanding the phenomenon of life.
But scientists at the European Space Agency later put brakes on the discovery. They claim the signals that the U.S. astronomers detected had come from polarized dust in the galaxy that can emit similar patterns as gravitational waves. An investigation team from the U.S. and Europe later announced that no conclusive evidence was found to confirm the existence of gravitational waves.
They claimed that something smaller than a single atom exploded and grew bigger than a galaxy in a fraction of a second. But after they found out that the discovery was false, the theory of cosmic inflation became a mere hypothesis.
That means the origin of the universe has once again become a mystery, and the search for the source of the Big Bang that started it all is back at square one. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Local researchers have found a way to tag cancer cells and culture them in the body. The development is expected to help doctors be more selective when prescribing anti-cancer medications, which could and hopefully will minimize the side effects for the patient. Our Son Jung-in has more.
The cancer cell count in a patient with the disease can be low, accounting for about 1 in a billion normal blood cells in a 1 milliliter blood sample. That makes it very difficult to single out the malicious cells. But local researchers have developed a way to isolate the cells using a semiconductor chip. The tiny chip has 560,000 holes invisible to the naked eye, and it can filter out cancer cells that are bigger than white blood cells, which can pass through the holes. The researchers used the device to collect cancer cells from a lung cancer patient. After 2 weeks, the cells had matted together into a lump.
We were able to culture the live malignant cells of patients with 4 different types of cancer: lung, pancreas, breast, and stomach, with a success rate of 70%.
Doctors anticipate that the development will help them prescribe anti-cancer drugs for their patients.
Once we incubate the cancerous cells, it is easy to understand their characteristics that can help us keep the cancer from spreading to other organs and predict which drugs will work best.
The new development is also expected to minimize any possible side effects while maximizing the effects of tailored anti-cancer treatments. Doctors are especially hopeful it will help them identify cancerous cells for diseases that are hard to catch in the early stages, such as lung or pancreatic cancer. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
More than 4,000 US troops are heading to Kuwait, where they may be put into action against the Islamic State extremist group in Iraq and Syria. The 3rd Brigade combat team from Colorado was already scheduled to deploy to Kuwait, but since President Obama asked Congress to formally approve his plan to go after the terror group, there's speculation these soldiers will be the first forces put into battle if a major US combat force is used to battle the extremists. Now, this comes as a new NBC Marist poll found that 2/3 of Americans support the use of ground forces to combat the IS group. Meanwhile, US officials say 8 Islamic State fighters on Friday attacked an Iraqi air base that hosts around 400 US forces. These fighters were killed in a counterattack by Iraqi troops. The Pentagon says no US troops were involved in that round of fighting, and the American personnel were actually in a different section of the sprawling airbase. Now to the crisis in Ukraine, and despite a ceasefire agreement being in place, the fighting rages on in eastern Ukraine with no signs of the violence letting up. Dozens of soldiers and civilians are said to have died on Friday. Military sources in Ukraine say there had been 120 separate attacks less than a day after a ceasefire was signed in Belarus by the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, Germany and France. Now, Ukraine's military also says several attacks happened Saturday morning near Mariupol. Amid fears about whether it can hold up, a ceasefire will come into effect on midnight Sunday. More than 5,000 people have been killed since this conflict began almost 1 year ago. Now, wrapping things up with a brief look at the weather, and most of Korea is under cloudy skies this evening. If you've been out and about today, you will have noticed the air quality in Seoul isn't the best at all, really, with moderately high levels of fine dust lingering over the capital still. Sunday is going to be an overcast day, but pretty mild, with the high reaching 9 degrees Celsius in Seoul. Now, for those of you watching us overseas, here's a look at the weather conditions in your part of the world. Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website. It can be found by going to arirang.co.kr/news. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.